There is a certain look in a person's eyes that doesn't come from age. You see it sometimes in quiet rooms, in crowded places where everyone else seems loud and distracted. It's not exhaustion, it's not sadness, and it's not bitterness either. It's depth. It's the look of someone who has lived too much life too early, a person who has seen things they didn't ask to see, who learned lessons they never signed up for, who had their innocence interrupted, not gently, but abruptly. If you've ever felt older than your peers for reasons you couldn't explain, if everyday problems feel strangely small to you, if you've ever wondered why you feel disconnected from drama that seems to consume everyone else, well, this message is for you, because chances are you've been quietly telling yourself the wrong story. Most people who carry deep emotional scars assume something is wrong with them. They think they're broken, too sensitive, too guarded, too tired. They look at others who move through life more lightly and assume they missed some essential instruction manual for being human. But psychology and ancient philosophy long before it tells a very different story. There is suffering that diminishes a person, and there is suffering that restructures them. What almost no one talks about is the second kind. We hear endlessly about trauma as damage, as something that ruins people, as something to erase, suppress, or heal as quickly as possible. But there is a lesser-known counterpart, one that doesn't romanticize pain, yet doesn't reduce survivors to victims either. It's called post-traumatic growth, and it explains why some people don't come out of hardship weaker. They come out different, sharper, deeper, more internally stable than those who never had to face themselves. If you've walked through enough psychological fire, something irreversible happens. You stop living on the surface. You begin to see life in layers. And the first sign that this transformation has already begun is something most people misunderstand entirely. I call it high-definition empathy. This isn't the soft, sentimental empathy people talk about online. It's not about being endlessly accommodating. It's not about absorbing everyone else's emotions until you disappear. High-definition empathy is perceptual. You don't just listen to words, you hear what's underneath them. You don't just observe behavior, you sense the emotional logic behind it. You notice micro shifts in tone, pauses that last half a second too long, smiles that arrive without reaching the eyes. You read emotional subtext the way others read subtitles, not because you wanted to, but because at some point you had to. When your environment wasn't emotionally safe, awareness became survival. You learned to scan rooms, to feel shifts before they became explosions, to detect danger long before it was spoken aloud. That sensitivity didn't disappear once the danger passed. It evolved. And now, in ordinary life, it makes you seem unusually perceptive. People may not know why they feel understood around you, but they do. This isn't weakness. It's psychological resolution. You see more because you've been forced to. The second strength shows up quietly, often unnoticed even by you. It's emotional endurance. Most people are trained to escape discomfort at all costs. They numb it, scroll past it, drown it in noise, substances, or constant stimulation. But you've learned something else entirely. You've learned how to stay, to sit with sadness without panicking, to feel anxiety without being consumed by it, to endure uncertainty without rushing toward false certainty just to feel relief. Pain doesn't shock you anymore, and that changes everything. When something is no longer terrifying, it stops controlling your decisions. This doesn't mean you enjoy suffering. It means you're no longer ruled by the fear of it. You've been there before, and familiarity breeds steadiness. The third sign is subtle but profound. You have a low tolerance for the trivial. Petty conflicts exhaust you. Status games feel hollow. Endless outrage cycles feel artificial. Not because you think you're above people, but because your nervous system refuses to waste energy on what doesn't matter. When you've faced real loss, when you've known real instability, when you've experienced moments that genuinely rewire your sense of reality, small things lose their emotional gravity. This is why people sometimes misread you. They think you're detached, disinterested, emotionally distant. But the truth is simpler. You've recalibrated. Your attention goes where meaning lives. or not at all. And that leads to something even deeper, a quiet, internal independence. At some point, you realized no one was coming to rescue you from your inner world. So you learned how to regulate yourself, how to ground yourself, how to rebuild yourself without an audience. You didn't become self-reliant because it was empowering. You became self-reliant because it was necessary, and necessity builds muscles comfort never touches. If any of this feels uncomfortably accurate, there's more to uncover, because these traits don't appear randomly, they form a pattern, and in the next part we'll explore how trauma doesn't just sharpen perception, it reshapes identity itself, creating a kind of inner solidity most people never develop. Most people understand pain in abstraction. They know the idea of it. They can talk about it. They can empathize with it at a distance. But you know its texture. You know how it feels when time slows down inside suffering. When nights stretch longer than they should. When silence becomes louder than noise. You've been in places where optimism feels insulting and platitudes feel hollow. And because of that, you can recognize someone else standing in the same darkness almost instantly. You don't need them to explain. You don't need a backstory. You see it in the eyes, in the posture, in the way their words arrive carefully, as if they've learned that honesty can be dangerous. This is why something strange keeps happening to you. People open up. Strangers tell you things they've never said out loud. Casual conversations turn unexpectedly intimate. Confessions arrive without invitation. And you might wonder why. It's not coincidence. People sense when someone is safe. And safety doesn't come from perfection. It comes from familiarity with pain. You've already crossed the terrain most people are afraid to acknowledge. So you don't flinch when others reveal their shadows. There's no rush to fix them. No need to interrupt. No silent judgment hiding behind polite nods. You listen differently. Not to respond, but to understand. And that does something powerful. It disarms people. Because most humans aren't desperate to be advised. They're desperate to be seen without being evaluated. Your presence offers that. Not because you try to be comforting, but because you know how much it hurts to have nowhere to land emotionally. You became a refuge simply by surviving. But here's what few people tell you. Being able to feel this deeply is both a gift and a liability. Empathy without boundaries becomes erosion. If you're not careful, you begin to absorb what was never yours to carry. You leave conversations heavier than you arrived. You replay other people's pain in your mind. You confuse compassion with responsibility. This is where growth demands a second transformation, because trauma didn't only soften you, it hardened you strategically. In the places where softness would destroy you, one of the most important strengths you developed is selective resilience. You may feel deeply, but not indiscriminately. You've learned, often the hard way, where to place your emotional energy. You don't chase validation. You don't beg for understanding. You don't over-explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. This isn't coldness, it's efficiency. Your nervous system knows how expensive emotional investment can be, so it allocates wisely. You can care without clinging, support without sacrificing yourself, be present without becoming entangled. That balance is rare. Another strength is psychological realism. You don't expect life to be fair. You don't assume people are always good or always bad. You understand that humans are complicated, contradictory, and often unconscious. This makes you harder to manipulate. You see through performative kindness. You recognize charm without substance. You detect when words and actions don't align. You've learned not to trust appearances because appearances once betrayed you, and while this may have cost you innocence, it gave you clarity. Then there's something even deeper, a quiet, unshakable inner authority. At some point, external approval stopped being the axis of your identity. You learned who you were in moments when no one was watching, when there was no applause, when survival itself became the metric of success. This rewired your relationship with validation. Praise doesn't inflate you. Criticism doesn't collapse you. You've already faced your own judgment in far harsher conditions, and that does something profound. It makes you difficult to control, but perhaps the most misunderstood strength you carry is this. You are not emotionally numb, you are emotionally sovereign. You feel deeply, but you are no longer ruled by every emotion that passes through you. You've learned the difference between feeling something and becoming it. Sadness doesn't define you, anger doesn't possess you, fear doesn't dictate your choices. You experience emotions as information, not commands. This is not accidental. It's the result of having emotions once overwhelm you completely and surviving anyway. Still, this depth comes with a quiet loneliness, because once you see beyond the surface, it's hard to pretend you haven't. You crave conversations that go somewhere, connections that have weight, silence that feels meaningful rather than awkward. You may feel out of sync with a world addicted to distraction, but that doesn't mean you're disconnected from life. It means you're connected to something deeper. And in the next part, we'll explore how this depth reshapes your identity, how trauma forces a confrontation with the self that few people ever undergo, and why that confrontation becomes the foundation of real inner strength. There's another trait that quietly sets you apart. It doesn't show up in peaceful moments. It doesn't announce itself in conversation. It reveals itself only when things fall apart. Your ability to function in chaos. Psychologists sometimes call this crisis competence, but that phrase doesn't fully capture what it feels like from the inside. When something suddenly goes wrong, most people's nervous systems spike, their thoughts scatter, their breathing shortens, their emotions rush to the front of the line. They freeze, or panic, or lash out. But you've noticed something strange about yourself. When pressure hits, you get calmer. A medical emergency, a sudden financial hit, a relationship imploding without warning, a moment where everything feels unstable. Instead of spiraling, your mind sharpens. Your emotions quiet down. Your awareness widens. Your attention moves directly to what needs to be done. It's not that you don't feel stress, it's that stress doesn't commandeer you. Your baseline for danger was calibrated long ago. You've already survived experiences that forced your nervous system past its limits. So when smaller crises appear, your body doesn't interpret them as existential threats. A rude comment doesn't rattle you. A setback doesn't derail you. A moment of uncertainty doesn't collapse your sense of self. You've already faced something far worse and lived. This is why, in moments when everyone else is losing their footing, you become the still point, the eye of the storm. Not because you're emotionless, not because you don't care, but because you're battle-tested. Your resilience isn't theoretical, it's embodied. You've learned how to think under pressure, how to regulate fear instead of being ruled by it, how to separate urgency from panic. While others are reacting, you're assessing. While others are overwhelmed, you're organizing. While others are looking for reassurance, you're already building a plan. And that makes people rely on you, sometimes more than you realize. But here's what matters most. This calm isn't a personality trait, it's a survival adaptation. Your nervous system learned early that falling apart wouldn't save you. That clarity, not chaos, was the only way forward. So it adapted, and now, when the world shakes, you remain standing. But survival skills alone are not the final evolution, they are only the foundation. Because what truly defines you doesn't appear in the heat of crisis. It appears after, when the emergency passes, and when the chaos settles, when the dust finally clears. You face a different question. Not how will I survive this, but who will I be now? This is where your rarest strength emerges, and it has nothing to do with endurance. It has everything to do with truth. The third and most powerful trait forged by deep suffering is radical authenticity. There is zero tolerance for fake in someone who has been pushed to their limit. Once you've lost something irreplaceable, once you've been stripped down to nothing but yourself, once you've stared at the floor of your own existence, the ego loses its grip. Pretending becomes exhausting. Performing becomes pointless. Impressing the wrong people becomes unbearable. You simply don't have the energy for it anymore. You stop chasing approval that costs you your integrity. You stop shaping yourself to fit rooms that feel wrong. You stop explaining yourself to people who aren't listening, not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. You know how fragile life actually is. You know how quickly everything can disappear. And that knowledge rewires your priorities. You begin to value alignment over admiration, truth over comfort, substance over image. This authenticity isn't loud, it doesn't seek attention, it doesn't need validation. It shows up in how you speak plainly, in how you choose honesty over harmony, in how you walk away from situations that demand you betray yourself. Some people will find this unsettling because authenticity exposes pretense, and those invested in illusion often feel threatened by those who refuse to participate in it. But you're not trying to disrupt, you're simply done pretending. You no longer live from borrowed identities. You've questioned yourself too deeply for that. Who am I when everything falls away? Who am I without roles, praise, or protection? What remains when survival is the only agenda? You've already answered those questions. And once you've done that, you don't need to prove anything. You don't need to be louder. You don't need to be more impressive. You don't need to be endlessly agreeable. You just need to be true. This is why your presence feels solid. Why people either trust you deeply or keep their distance. You're not flexible in the ways that cost self-respect. You won't bend to belong. You won't shrink to be accepted. You won't inflate yourself to be admired. You've already survived being alone, and that changes everything. But radical authenticity comes with a responsibility, because once you stop pretending, you must choose what to stand for, and that choice, how you live with the depth you've earned, is what transforms survival into meaning. In the final part, we'll explore what comes after resilience, how people like you stop merely enduring life and begin shaping it with intention, boundaries, and quiet strength. At some point, something fundamental shifts. You stop chasing symbols that were never meant to fulfill you. Status loses its spell. Titles feel hollow. Prestige without substance feels almost embarrassing. You've seen how quickly everything can be taken away. And once you know that, you can't pretend that appearances matter more than truth. People who haven't struggled often live under constant surveillance, not from others, but from their own fear of judgment. They wear masks to be accepted. They edit themselves to fit expectations. They curate a version of life that looks good but feels empty. You don't do that anymore. You burned your masks a long time ago, not as an act of rebellion, but of survival. When you've been pushed to the edge, there's no energy left for performance. Only truth remains. You speak plainly now, not aggressively, not cruelly, but honestly. You don't soften reality to protect illusions. You don't lie to keep the peace. You don't pretend to be smaller to make others comfortable. And this does something interesting. It intimidates people who are living a lie, because truth has weight, and weight exposes fragility. But to those who are searching, those who are tired of pretending, those who want something real in a world obsessed with appearances, you are magnetic. They recognize you instantly, because authenticity recognizes authenticity. You also value time differently. Money can be earned. Status can be rebuilt. Reputation can be repaired. Time cannot. You know this, not philosophically but viscerally. You've lived moments that taught you how fragile existence really is. So you don't rush through conversations that matter. You don't waste energy on people who drain you. You don't postpone the life you want for a future that isn't guaranteed. This makes your choices look strange to others, but they aren't strange, they're informed. And now we need to reframe a word you may have quietly used against yourself for years. Broken. You've probably said it internally. I'm damaged. I'm not the same. Something in me is cracked. But broken isn't the right word, because broken things don't evolve. You did. In Japan, there is an ancient art form called kintsugi. When a ceramic bowl shatters, they don't throw it away. They put it back together with gold, not to hide the cracks, but to highlight them. The fractures become the most visible part of the object, and because of that, the bowl becomes more valuable than it was before it ever broke. The damage is not erased, It's integrated. That is what happened to you. You didn't return to who you were before. You became something else, stronger, more spacious, more capable of holding weight. Your cracks aren't weaknesses. They're proof that your inner structure expanded under pressure instead of collapsing. You can hold grief without disintegrating. You can hold complexity without simplifying it. You can hold truth without running from it. You are not used up. You are reinforced. People who walked an easy path often remain delicate, not because they are lesser, but because they were never tested. Their identity depends on stability. Their confidence depends on approval. Their peace depends on conditions remaining favorable. When pressure comes, they shatter. You didn't. You adapted. That makes you something rare, not unbreakable, but anti-fragile. Stress didn't destroy you, it clarified you. This is why you shouldn't envy those who seem untouched by hardship. They haven't met themselves yet, you have. You've been stripped down to the essentials and rebuilt from the inside out. That kind of strength can't be bought. It can't be taught. It can't be faked. It's earned, slowly, painfully, honestly. So if you've ever felt different, if you've ever felt older than your years, if you've ever wondered why you can stand calmly where others fall apart, this is why. You weren't ruined by what you went through, you were forged. And forging leaves marks, but those marks don't diminish you, they make you unmistakable. If this message resonated with you, if you've survived pressure that reshaped you, if you know deep down that your scars are not defects, but signatures, leave a diamond emoji in the comments. Diamonds are only formed under immense pressure, and I want to see how many of you are shining down there. You are not broken, you are proof.